I just finished not long ago reading a book called The More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible by Charles Eisenstein. And he actually has a chapter or a section called Hate. So that's what I'm going to read from today. To humanize an opponent might be challenging to allies who are still inhabiting a story of hatred. They might interpret the new view as softness or betrayal. How could you excuse those people? A friend of mine, a military veteran committed to peace, told me the story of a friend of his who had the opportunity to serve as the personal chef to none other than Dick Cheney, a man whom millions of us perceive as an awful human being, a soulless, duplicitous, conniving warmonger. My friend, expecting confirmation of this view, asked his friend what it was like working for Cheney. "Wonderful," he replied. "You can tell a lot about someone's character by the way they treat their help, and he always treated me with warmth, dignity, and respect, even though I was only a cook." This is not an endorsement of Dick Cheney's political views or conduct. The point here is that a perfectly decent human being, harboring the same basic motivations and fears as any other human being, can do awful things in one context and admirable things in another. The error of attributing bad behavior to personal evil has a mirror image that does result in a kind of betrayal. It is a challenge to stay true to what we serve without vilifying those who do not serve it. Wouldn't it be nice if the problem were indeed the greed and wickedness of the dastardly individuals who hold the reins of power? The solution would be so simple then. Simply remove those people from power. Scour the world of evil. But that is just more of the same war against evil that has been with us ever since the first agricultural civilizations invented the concept of evil to begin with. More of the same will only bring more of the same. Surely the time has come for a deeper revolution. Activist Marie Goodwin comments, "The solution of rooting out the bad would make the solving of the world's problems, which seem so very overwhelming, a task that is doable in our current paradigm. That is why we defend this idea of a solution at all costs. I think people get really overwhelmed by today's constant barrage of bad news and disaster stories, all of which, we are told, can be solved by winning, mostly with force, the fight of good and evil. It is reassuring because it reduces many problems to one problem and makes sense of the world in a way that doesn't challenge our deeper mythology. In a perverse sort of way, by refusing to hate, we are committing betrayal. We are betraying hate itself. We are betraying the story of the world that pits good versus evil. In doing so, we incite the scorn and fury of former allies who chastise us for being so soft and naive as to think their opponents can be treated as anything but enemies. I remember reading a column by the brilliant and abrasive leftist Alexander Cockburn, in which he recalled a formative experience in his education as a political journalist. An editor asked him, "Is your hate pure?" A refrain that Cockburn repeated throughout his career. Cockburn's was a world of hypocrites and blowhards, of venality and greed, of bold-faced liars and consciously cruel leaders, and of the sycophants and shills who enabled them. I must confess to a kind of unholy delight in the wit and venom with which he dispatched his oppressors, his opponents. But I was aware as well of the psychological pressure, separate from the evidence or the reasoning he presented, to agree with his worldview, lest I be numbered among the dupes and apologists he so viciously skewered. With equal fervor, though perhaps less finesse, pundits on the right do the same thing. Underneath the slurry of opinions, the same mind form prevails. Although we recognize ad hominem attacks as unfair or irrelevant, we are helpless to resist launching them because of the dispositionism that permeates our beliefs. So-and-so disagrees with me because she is a bad person. For bad, we may substitute all manner of adjectives, but the judgmentality is palpable. I have given up reading comments on my articles because of all of the personal insults I must wade through. Commentators impute onto me all kinds of intellectual and moral deficiencies. I am naive. I am a narcissistic wannabe hippie who has never had any real experiences. I am just another arrogant white male hogging a stage. I have overlooked a trivial logical flaw in my argument. I should get a real job. And on the other hand, supporters project onto me various saintly qualities that I obviously do not possess, at least no more than anybody else. That feels nice. The problem is, once on a pedestal, there's only one way to go. The slightest misdemeanor on my Facebook page provokes intense criticism. I post a photo of my teenage son with his prom date, and I get criticized for objectifying women because I called her a prom date. I post a picture of my baby son asleep on my lap while I write, and I get criticized for exposing him to electromagnetic radiation and not giving him empathetic attention. My point here is not to defend myself. The criticisms have some validity. What is significant is that the critics sometimes say, I now have to question your message, or I can no longer in good conscience endorse your work. This is alarming. I certainly don't want anyone's acceptance of, say, the proposals in sacred economics, which I'm going to be reading from a lot more on my channel, to hinge on my personal moral purity. If you are reading the present book because you are under the impression that I am some kind of saint, you might as well put it down right now, unless you discover someday on Facebook that I'm no better than any other human being, feel betrayed, and dismiss my message as the ravings of a hypocrite. I hope that you will consider these ideas on their own merits and not mine. I highlighted that past sentence too. Ad hominem attacks seek to discredit the message by discrediting the messenger, a tactic that draws on the converse of the dispositionist view that people say bad things because they are bad people. If one can show they are bad people, then what they are saying must be bad too. The situationist knows that this view is mistaken and that tactics drawing from it are likely to be counterproductive. The next several sentences I wish I could read directly to Kanye West. Yes, we should continue to expose the truths of history and the workings of the world. But if we want these truths to be heard, we must not wrap these exposés in the usual shroud of blame. The logic of control tells us that by shaming the perpetrators, we can change them. But actually, we only drive them deeper into their story. When I'm attacked, I seek allies who will defend me. On and on we go, on the blame merry-go-round. When we deploy rhetorical flourishes such as the fault lies with the fat cat banksters who don't care about the suffering of the common man or the degradation of the environment, we also make ourselves sound ridiculous to the bankers themselves, who, like most human beings, do in fact care about their fellow humans and the planet. If we want to reach them, our articulation of the problem has to avoid ascribing personal evil to them while also being uncompromising in describing the dynamics of the problem. Talk about a balancing act. I cannot offer a formula on how to do this. The right words and strategies arise naturally from compassion. from the understanding that the bankers or whoever do as I would do if I were in their shoes. In other words, compassionate and effective words arise from a deeply felt realization of our common humanity, distant relatives. And this is possible only to the extent to which we have applied the same to ourselves. Truly, to be an effective activist requires an equivalent inner activism. When we ourselves stand in a different story from blame and hate, we become capable of dislodging others from that place too. Our peaceful hearts change the situation, disrupting the story in which hate comes naturally and offering an experience that suggests a new one. Hold on. Maybe I'm saying this only because I'm naive. Maybe my soft, coddled upbringing has blinded me to the reality of evil and the need to fight it with force. It is certainly true that I have not experienced firsthand the worst of what human beings can do to each other. But let me offer you the story of the South Korean activist and farmer Hwang Dae-kwon. Hwang was a militant anti-imperialist protester in the 1980s, a dangerous activity during that time of martial law. In 1985, he was arrested by the secret police and tortured for 60 days until he confessed to spying for North Korea. He was then thrown into prison, where he spent 13 years in solitary confinement. During this time, his only friends were the flies, mice, roaches, and lice that shared his cell, along with the weeds he met in the prison yard. This experience turned him into an ecologist and practitioner of nonviolence. He realized, he told me, that all the violence he had endured was a mirror of the violence in himself. His number one principle for activism now is to maintain a peaceful heart. That's beautiful. At a recent demonstration, a line of police equipped with riot gear was marching toward the demonstrators. Hwang walked up to one of the police and, with a big smile, gave him a hug. The policeman was petrified. Hwang said he could see the terror in his eyes. Hwang's peacefulness had rendered him incapable of violence. For this to work, the peacefulness must be genuine and deep. The smile must be real. The love must be real. If there is an intent to manipulate, to show the other up, to highlight the brutality by contrasting it with one's nonviolence, then the power of the smile and the hug is much weaker. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Peace and love.
I see the signs and I'm moving about as quickly as I can now.
Used to wake up at dawn, check my Nikes for roaches, wipe the coat up out my eye, light up tree to fight the notion I was far from getting on. Now it's looking like I'm chosen, huh? Grinding so hard you think I'm trying to bust a Trojan, but I know it's approaching like I copied and pasted from prophets and sages how to penetrate hearts. So what I jot on a page, I might reposition stars in the thoughts. In the space you get conviction mixed with art. When I hop on the stage and believe we need healing, planet beasts need killing. So my pen bleeds, feeling it's deeper, they ain't spilling. Yeah, every time I speak, reveal it, I think brilliant. And I'ma reach 1 million of souls with these lines so precisely designed that it might seem divine. On the road to perdition, the blind lead the blindness on the screen and in the sky. Everywhere I see the sign, let go.
I see the signs and I'm moving. I see the signs and I'm moving. I see the signs and I'm moving about as quickly as I can now.